I was saying that we have several groups of people in the project now. And so one started about 5 weeks ago, the early track, about 1,300 students coming from about 25, 30 countries from about 50 universities. So they have been in the project for a while. They know what's going on. They only have a few more weeks to go. So they probably don't need any orientation, but if you guys are here and have questions, we will answer them. The second group are the kids. So we have about 1,000 kids from something like 70 countries this semester. They participate in a separate special simplified track in separate teams matched by age. So they come from about, as I said, 60, something like that, close to 70 countries. And so unlike university students, the kids had to go through theoretical training. So they had 4 weeks of training. Each week they had to go and learn something. They had training materials and then take a test. And so unless they pass all 4 tests, they would not be allowed to participate in international teams. So they already have completed the training. And so on Monday, they will be placed on teams with other kids. And so they will be participating in the project, as I said, in the children's version of X-Culture. And then most importantly, we have a large group, so close to 4,000 students from universities all around the world, something like 40 countries, 150 universities, who will be joining the late track. Again, they had to take some training, do the readiness test, and on Monday they will be placed on teams. About half of them are MBA or other master's students, and then the other half are undergraduate business students. And so today we would like to review quickly what you should expect, how X-Culture works and goes, what challenges you're likely to face, what sort of solutions seem to be working best. And then if you have any questions, we will answer them. And maybe if you don't mind, I'll start with a quick review, me talking, but I see we have here Ernesto, as I said, we have here Karen, and then if we have any other professors, raise your hands, I will add you to the panel. So it would be very nice if you also shared your experience. And just as a quick introduction, so the professors that we have here, so Karen Linden, she's right here in North Carolina. Actually, now she's right on the shore, so she lives right on the ocean's shore. But she's at the University of North Carolina, Greensboro, and she has been participating in X-Culture for many years. And so she's helping us in many ways, but also administratively. So she's helping us run this project, and she also helps with preparing the symposia that we organize. So involved in many sort of roles as a teacher, as an administrator, as a colleague, as a researcher. So hi, Karen. So, and then we have Professor Ernesto Tavoletti. Again, he is in Italy, in a beautiful city of Macerata. Again, he helps X-Culture in many different ways. Like, for example, he was the organizer of the recent X-Culture symposium in Italy. In fact, I have a picture. So if you look at that picture closely, not only will you see me and Karen somewhere there, but I think Ernesto is oh yeah, right here. I think that's Ernesto right here. So that's a picture from the last symposium that we had a few months ago in Italy, and Ernesto organized it. So thank you so much for being here. All right, so in terms of what to expect next, very simple. So on Monday, we will start forming teams. As of now, we have quite a few, in fact, almost all students have passed the readiness test, and we will start forming teams. Normally, we started doing that. I always promised myself to start in the morning, but because many people are still taking the readiness test last minute, we literally have like extra 100 people added every hour. So usually we wait until about noon New York time before we start forming teams. And it takes about 4 or 5 hours to form those teams. So you will be getting your team assignments towards the end of the day, especially if you're in Asia, Europe, Africa. You will probably not get the assignment until late night your time. So kind of afternoon my time. And so the way we form the teams is the following. So we kind of follow a few rules. One, we separate people by age and education level. So MBA students are placed on teams with MBA students, undergraduate students with undergraduate students. We now even try to match them by age. So if it's a 19-year-old, the team will be all kind of 19, 20. If it's a 34, 35-year-old, the team will be older. And then now we have kids, so they will be in teams with other kids, again, same age. A team with 9, 10-year-olds, 11, 12, and so on, so on. Now, once we separated you by age, then we try to separate you, not to separate, but match you by country. So the way or the goal is to have each team comprised of about 6 people, each one from a different country. So with the university students, we usually start with somewhat smaller teams, usually about 5 people. And then if you ask for more team members, we can add another one next week. With the kids, we'll probably go directly with 7, and that will be the size. I don't know, I want to ask Ernesto and Karen. In a few semesters, we also tried to match people by their preference of the client and by the work experience. And so the idea was that it would be nice if, let's say, people who have a lot of work experience would work with other people who have a lot of work experience. And if somebody said that they like, I don't know, XYZ company, maybe we should try to form a team around that. But I'm not sure if it's a good idea, because I guess in the real world, there will be some differences. And then also people change their opinion about what company they want to work on. So it's not always possible to match. Do you think it would be feasible? Because we do have that information. What's your take on that?
I don't know. In my view, it is actually better if we try to maximize variety, because actually, as we say, in the work environment, we have actually different teammates, and some of them might have a lot of experience, some others might be very junior. So I think that if we have some variety, it is better. Of course, it is going to be more complicated for instructors, because of course we appreciate having some more uniformity, and so we try to divide masters with bachelor students. So yes, dividing between master students and bachelor students, this makes sense. But regarding the background of students, maybe maximizing variety might be a good idea in my view. Right. I don't know what Karen thinks about.
We noticed.
I agree with Ernesto. I believe that students are going to end in situations in the workplace where you can't choose your own clients or your vendors, and so it's a nice opportunity to have that variety. And then I think that we did, maybe it was last semester, we had students that had the same work experience levels. Is that true, Voss? Yes,
we actually tried to do that a couple of times.
Yeah, I heard only from a few of my students that were in the face-to-face class, so this is a really small sample population, but surprisingly, those older students that have work experience were a little disappointed because they felt like their other team members kept pushing back with different excuses to say, well, I have a lot of work going on right now. So everybody was so consumed with their work lives that they ended up actually not contributing in great ways. Kind of the opposite, I think, of what we thought would happen. But that was a small group of people, so
right. One of the reasons we actually tried to match people by age and by the level of studies is because we noticed that even though there is no objective difference in terms of the quality of work produced by MBAs versus undergraduates, unfortunately, when you have that kind of visible differentiating marker, it often leads to conflicts. So the MBA students believe that they're much more mature and they tend to be a little bit bossy. And then undergraduate students often feel like they're being not, appreciated enough. And so that often leads to tension. And so every time they have a conflict, even though conflicts happen for many reasons, here they blame right away, oh, because those are kids, or oh, because they're so bossy. So we try to keep them separate. However, I must say that even though the plan is to keep people matched by age and maximize the variety of nationalities, there will be some countries that may have 2 people from the same country. And the reason for that is that first, we have a lot of applicants from the United States. So we always have more applications from the United States than from other countries. They account for about 30% of all participants. So some teams may have 2 people from the United States on the team. They will be from different universities in different states. And the difference between California and New York is probably bigger than the difference between Germany and Austria, for example. But in any case, there will be some teams that will have 2 people located in the same country, although in different geographies. Second, we will be adding some people a little later once the project started. And so at that point, again, it may not be necessarily possible, or not always possible, to maximize the national diversity. So if there is a team that says we want 1 extra team member, and the only team member we have is from a country that is already represented on the team, we may still add that team member so to kind of satisfy the wish of the team, but it may mean that there will be now all of a sudden 2 people from, let's say, the United States. So that is possible. So now, once the teams are formed, you will receive an email that will contain the list of all team members. So you will have the names and you will have the emails. And so the initial contact will be initiated by email. So you will contact people by email, you will introduce yourself, and then from that point on, you can communicate any way you want. Most teams form groups in Facebook. Most teams have at least occasional meetings in Skype. Most teams use Dropbox or Google Docs to edit documents, but technically it's up to your team. WhatsApp, Viber, so all of those are viable options. And again, I want to ask professors here, in your experience, would you advise students to use like face-to-face communication tools like Skype? Do you think it's necessary? Do you hear that students use them a lot? What's your experience and advice in that respect? Anyone, I don't know, what would you recommend?
If you want my experience, I think that some face-to-face communication, especially in the very beginning, so that people can know each other, can be actually critical instead of having just emails or messages. So especially during the first week, in order to start establishing some personal contacts, I think it is actually a good idea. And maybe it could also be important to have at least one meeting, one webinar a week or something like that. But for certain, a face-to-face in the very beginning, I think it is very important in order to establish a positive climate inside the team.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I agree with Ernesto, and I know that we have some other professors too. They might want to speak to their experiences with students. We did an activity in class earlier this week, and we looked at those countries that we already know are going to be partnered from the early list that was provided to us for this track. And we looked at time zone differences, and we realized that you might end up on a team with 6 different people. That would be one of the larger teams, but it would be difficult maybe for everyone to make a Skype call all of the time. And that's fine if you could even get 3 or 4 people on live Skype calls or using Google Hangouts, whatever you choose to use. But just to have that interpersonal experience, I know with my American lens, we can tend to just want to get the tasks done. And what I've seen is over the years, students have had great experiences forming relationships, but the way to do that is to have a few video calls, it creates accountability and a little bit of personalization in the project. So trying not to do everything flat with email and Facebook. Give it a try, and if everybody can't make the call, that's fine. You can hopefully have a few during the semester.
My experience is that when students don't use Skype at all, the problem is that in many cases, the team members are just basically 2 words on the screen. And so without at least occasional face-to-face contact, even if by email, people don't develop that sense of appreciating team members as people, as persons, not as just, some abstract, as I said, text on the screen. And so it seems like, and research shows that if you have at least an occasional video chat, even if not everyone is present, it definitely changes the dynamics of the team. People feel more sort of obliged to participate. They feel more sense of responsibility to the team. And so as a result, free riding is less likely. As a result, people work harder, and it's also more fun. In fact, in many cases, this sort of collaboration led to friendship, to people would even meet later on, stay in touch even years after. We even had cases when people fell in love and we visited each other later. I haven't heard about any weddings yet, and it's not something I necessarily encourage, but when you have this closer contact, it can lead to more than just you together writing a report. So it can be much more personally and professionally developing. So anyway, now once you form the teams, the rest is kind of relatively simple. So you have a list of companies, and I already posted the challenges on the website, on the resource page. So there will be a total of about 10 companies this semester. All the challenges are somewhat similar. So all companies essentially ask you for help in developing a strategy for market expansion. So all of them essentially say the same things. They say, we have a product or a service that is loved and popular in a specific area. We would like to expand into new areas. So we want to expand our market, but we are not sure where there would be demand for this product and how we should sort of access or enter that market. And so your job will be to study the industry. So you first will conduct some research and will analyze this specific product or service compared to competition. You will try to think then, so what markets may have demand for such products and do not have enough supply. And then once you've selected the market, you will think about the best ways to market the product there. So marketing, maybe the best pricing strategy, maybe the best entry mode. Should it be like a joint venture or a wholly owned subsidiary, or maybe just online exporting or some other way. And then if the company wants to hire people there, you will advise the company on the best recruitment strategy, selection strategy, compensation strategy. If it's a physical product, the question may be, how do we ship it there? You know, cost, timing, safety, so things like that. And so all you have to do is first review all of the challenges and as a team select one client. So whichever one you like. So there is no restriction, and we kind of hope that it will be roughly equally popular. But if some companies have more teams working on their challenge, that's perfectly fine. I will tell from my experience that one, it is sort of to your advantage to select a less popular company. And the reason for that is that we will be selecting a winner in each company category. So if you select a less popular company, you sort of have less competition. And two, I can tell you which company has been or was the most popular one in the early track. And that was Hiplantro with the brand La Teresita. So they make herbal teas. It's a company from Colombia. And so an unusually large number chose that company as a client. So I love the company. It's a great company, great tea, great product. But if you want to avoid competition, you may be better off selecting some different company instead. But otherwise, no restriction. Also, for the kids, in the past, we would allow them to work only on one challenge, which we call the dream school. So the little kids would be designing the school of their dreams. But then many of them were complaining and saying, first of all, we're not kids anymore. I'm 16 or 17, and so I want to work on a big challenge. And then even younger kids said, oh, I really like that company that makes chocolate, which, by the way, we have this semester, or tea or clothing. So this semester, we allow the kids to choose any challenge they want as long as the team agrees. We still have the dream school as an option if they want to work on that, but otherwise, no restrictions. So once you've selected the challenge, just read the instructions. So you will have a few pages that describe the company, then the actual list of questions that you need to work on, and then the schedule. And you just basically go through that schedule. So each week there will be a deadline, there will be a deliverable. Each Sunday you have to submit something like a little progress survey. And that's basically how it will repeat itself every week, after week, after week. What we will do on our end is that we will download those surveys every week, and we will look at the data. And first, we will send those data to the professors. So the professors need to know how their students are doing. So we will summarize, for example, peer evaluations. Each week, you will be doing peer evaluations. So you will be evaluating the performance of your team members. And so we will send those numbers to your professors. And the goal there is not to punish anyone or not to maybe even evaluate anyone. It's more to detect if there is a problem. Maybe somebody is lost, or maybe somebody is not performing quite well and doesn't know what needs to be done. So we want to know about that early on. And so we want to send that information to the professors so that they can help you. And the only thing that you should worry about is that if your peer evaluations go too low, then you may be in trouble. So we have instituted the rule, and it's enforced literally automatically. So even if it's one of my students, I cannot do anything about that. So if your peer evaluations, average peer evaluations, drop below 2.0 out of 5, you will get an automatic warning. So the system will tell you that your peer evaluations are too low and you need to do something about that. So you need to talk to your team, you need to work harder, you need to communicate better. But then if next week, second week, if the performance doesn't improve, if your peer evaluations are below 2.0 2 weeks in a row, sorry, but you will be automatically kicked out of the team. So students whose performance was poor 2 weeks in a row are not kicked out from the project, but only from the team. So we place them on one-person teams. They can still stay in the project and complete it, but they would have to work alone, not in the team. And so usually it doesn't happen. So out of like 4,000 people, there will be probably about 30, 40 every week who will get a warning. And of those, almost all will get back on track, will contact the team, will say, sorry guys, I was busy, sick, broke up with a boyfriend, girlfriend, but I'm good now, so what did I miss? Let me work on that. So it gets fine right away. But there will be, starting like week 4 or 5, there will be probably 2-3 people every week who will not improve their performance, and they will be excluded from their teams. Usually we never hear from them back. So I assume that the vast majority of those people probably just dropped the course and never told us. So we don't really worry too much about that, but you know, that happens sometimes. At the same time, if you are on a team where there is a student who is not performing well, don't worry, you can do, in fact, you should do several things. One, first and foremost, give that person low peer evaluations. Otherwise, we will not know that there is a problem. So some teams are trying to look good by giving everyone high peer evaluations. It's not productive. So it's not going to help your team in any way, because peer evaluations, average peer evaluations, we don't use it when we select the best teams. So even if you all get 5s, if your report is weak, you know, that's about the report, not about your peer evaluations. So tell us the truth. If there is a problem, tell us about that. Second, if we see that there is a problem, as I said, we will assign someone to talk to the free rider, a coach, see if we can help, see what's going on, and hopefully that will help. In fact, in most cases, it does help. But if nothing helps, as I said, we will still drop that person from the team. And we have a few universities that will join us a little late. The semester there starts late, so there is a very good chance we will be able to replace that team member after a week or 2. So we always have some people who join late, so there may be a possibility for you to get a new team member instead. So if there is a problem, try to do something about it, communicate with the team member. Almost always, the reason people don't participate is not because they're lazy or irresponsible. It's because they just don't know what's going on. Like, they didn't initiate the contact initially, then they got lost, they don't know what's going on. They really want to work, they just don't know how. And so if you communicate with them, if you send them an email, they will probably get, you know, back on track and will participate. But if not, as I said, there are several things you can do, and we'll react to that. I want to ask again, professors here. So do you think the process that we use to deal with free riders, do you think it's fair? Do you think we should be more strict, maybe increase the threshold to 2.5 maybe, you know, if it's below 2.5, you're out? Or do you think it's enough to go with 2.0? If there is a problem, we send a warning. We usually automatically assign a coach. The coach will reach out to the person, will ask what's going on, will ask if help is needed. And basically, you know, if even that doesn't help, then we drop the people. What would be your advice here? Do you think that's a good strategy?
I'll jump in first. I think for me, the numbers are fine the way that they are. And it's really the mechanism of the students using the system that's available to them. I think that we've all seen some teams that maybe everyone gave each other 5s for a couple of weeks, but really Karen wasn't doing anything. And then it gets down to the point where the draft is about ready, and we realize that even though we delegated certain responsibilities, that Karen has not produced the work. And so all of a sudden, toward the end, Karen goes from 5.5 to a 2, or really low scores. And so if the teams can work early on to detect problems, I have had success stories with students that they said, I got some low scores, and then I realized what I really need to be doing, or they reach out to the professor or coach, or they just say, oh, we're really going to take this seriously. I just thought this was going to be kind of a fun experience. So it can really correct behavior, and if students can just use that system early on, it will help with getting through that conflict. And if that person's really not going to be plugged in, it's better to know right from the early parts of the project, not a surprise at the end for anybody. So those are my thoughts.
Right. Yeah, exactly. I will say also a couple of things, and this is more for professors, especially those who participate in the first time. But I think this may be also useful for the students to hear. So one, you will hear from your students mainly when there is a problem in the team. So when everything is going well, students don't have the reason to talk to you about it. So you will hear primarily when there is a problem. And so what will happen is that at some point, professors will be under the impression that everything is going wrong, because 3 students talked to me today and all 3 had problems. So which means that everybody must have problems. In reality, the situation is actually pretty good. So every week we measure peer evaluations. We measure how satisfied the students are, if everything is clear. Are they enjoying the process, and are they confident in their ability to complete the project on time? And so the numbers are usually very good. Like, for example, peer evaluations usually average at about 4.3, and about 90% of the students are actually above 3. So in fact, it's like 93% are above 3. So meaning that almost all students do okay, good, or excellent. Likewise, for example, when we ask how many students on your team are actively participating in the project, in most cases, most teams say everyone's participating. So there are a few teams that will say somebody is not participating, but the vast majority actually does pretty well. The satisfaction, enjoyment, motivation levels usually hover around 85, 87. So again, on a 100-point scale, so almost perfect. And then the clarity usually starts at about 70% and then goes up all the way to about 97 in the last week. So obviously, as students spend more time on it, more things become clear. So it's not as bad as it may look based on what you hear from the students, because as I said, only the ones who experience problems need to talk to you, and so that may create an impression that there is a problem. Second, with the students, same thing. So if it looks like there is a huge problem, here is what you sort of should know. And again, I will tell what I tell the professors, but I hope the students will learn from that as well. There are two things that professors can do when a student approaches them with a complaint. Let's say a student comes to you and says, we have a team member who is not participating, or maybe who is a little, I don't know, too bossy, or maybe too shy and not saying much. So what do I do? A very, very bad decision, so a very bad strategy to respond to that would be to say to the student something like this: "Oh, you poor thing, I feel so sorry, I feel so bad for you. Let me talk to Vas and let me see if we can do something about that. So maybe we can punish that bad student, kick him out of the team immediately, because you're such a good student, you deserve to have a good team, so we'll do something about that right away." The reason it's a very, very bad strategy, for two reasons. One, it creates an impression that in the real world, everything should be going well. And if somebody is not participating, that's wrong and it needs to be fixed. And that's just a lie. We've seen many, many papers that studied free riding, for example, in global virtual teams. And in most cases, including corporate teams, about 30% of the people do not meet the expectations of their team. So if you ever participated in a team project, any project, school, work, there are always people who don't participate very actively. And so that's a real representation of what's going on in the world. Two, no, we will not be able to do anything about that. So if you tell and promise your student that you will fix the problem, they will sort of expect you to fix the problem. And no, you will not be able to fix it. First of all, we will not be dropping anyone from the team just because somebody said that the student is bad. We want to see, sustained record of poor performance, and only then we'll do something about that. Second, as I said, usually it's not the kind of a problem that can be fixed like that. So in most cases, what will happen, the student will be unhappy because you set wrong expectations. So by answering that way, you kind of create an impression that everybody should be participating actively. And if not, the student is unlucky to have a bad team. And that's just not true. So the student will feel like he or she was unlucky and will not be satisfied with the project. Second, when the problem will not be fixed, which is likely, or at least not always will be fixed, you, the professor, will be blamed for that because you promised that you will fix it and you didn't. And so the student will be unhappy, your teaching evaluations will go down, and the student will not learn anything from that. A good response, the right response, would be something like this. In fact, that's exactly what I tell my students. I say, I kind of feel sorry for you, but in reality, I'm actually very happy. And it's not because I want to see you suffer. It's just because what you're experiencing in this team now, that's exactly what you will experience every single time when you participate in a team project. You graduate next year, you will get a job, you will work as a manager, as an employee, you will have to work in teams, and this will happen again and again and again and again. So I kind of, on the one hand, wish that you had a team where everybody performs, but I know in that case you would have not learned anything because that's not a true representation of reality. So don't worry about that. Your grade doesn't depend on it. As long as you do well individually, you'll get a good grade. I'm not unhappy if your team, has some problems. You will get a good grade. Just try your best. Just learn from this. Do what you can with the other 5-6 team members who are actively participating. Try to reconnect with that team member who's missing. If you don't hear from him or from her for a few days, develop a contingency plan, redistribute the workload, use it as a learning opportunity. Big deal. I mean, even if you finish this project with enemies in 5 continents, but you learn something, I'm happy. The cost of a mistake in this environment is low, so that when you do it as part of your real job, you know what to do. So yeah, go and deal with that. I'm not going to help you because, as I said, it's life. I mean, the whole purpose of the project is to give you this preview of real life, and so you can learn, so you know what to expect next time, so you know what to do. And yeah, that's all I say. And then students kind of realize that, oh, maybe it is kind of what the life is like in, when you work in teams. And so they don't have rosy expectations. They know that that's part of life, and they learn to deal with that. And so what happens in most cases, I get a lot of emails later on that say something like this: you know what, professor? It was hard. It was challenging. At some point, I even hated the project. But looking back, actually, it was the best experience I've ever had. Looking back, I actually learned a lot. I really learned a lot. And so it was much, much better than just reading a book. So thank you so much. And can I participate again? In fact, we have a lot of students who ask to participate again. So yeah, just set the right expectations and don't try to fix all the problems for the students, because as I said, experiencing those problems is exactly what this project is designed to give students. If we just wanted them to have fun, we would show them a movie, right? So here we want to show them how the real life works. I don't know, professors, do you have any comments on that? Am I taking it too far? I mean, I don't know, what's your take on it?
Yes, regarding peer evaluation, I think it is working more or less, and I think it is important for us as instructors in order to see what is going on in the teams, and it is also important in order to take action if we have some missing students up there. It is also a big issue because, for example, we are presenting a paper in June at the Academy of International Business regarding the effect of peer evaluation on team performance. And actually, I can anticipate that, for example, we do not have statistical evidence that peer evaluation are improving performance, because actually we have people that are investing more time, but there are also some negative, maybe social dynamics that might come out. Because you are going to receive marks every week by your teammates, and we assume that your teammates are very professional or just looking at the quality of your work, but other dynamics might be involved, like in every social environment. So we are fully aware of that. But I think they are still important in order to identify very early if we have any problems. Because, for example, we have a better situation if the peer evaluation is just at the end of the project. But in that case, we don't know during the project if something wrong is going on. So this is actually important in order to have an assessment of the internal dynamics for us as instructors. So yes, I think they are important. I would recommend students to be as professional and fair as possible in evaluating their teammates. So you should not be influenced by, I don't know, whatever, someone that is more close to you or whatever, but you should actually look at the quality of their work, and you should give that grade in order to reward or punish behavior that is unfair. So we should actually develop as students also an education in peer evaluation. And you should remember that I understand as students you would like just instructors giving you marks. But as scholars, we receive peer evaluation every week when we present a paper to a journal or in our academic work in general. So I think that it is also instructive to experience peer evaluation, and also maybe the negative feedbacks that you might have from your one teammate that could come back to you and saying, I've been receiving a bad mark, this is unfair, but you should discuss this inside your team, and you should actually develop a common ground in order to provide fair evaluation to each other.
And you're absolutely right, Ernesto, that we did actually test whether peer evaluations only at the end or every week not shared, and then every week shared, which one works best. And even though when you share peer evaluations each week, it may affect the team dynamics, like if you get low evaluations, you may be kind of mad at your team. But overall, it actually led to much better performance and much greater satisfaction. So we tried, and so that's why you will see peer evaluations of every team member every single week. As I said, because we want to need to know that, but also we want you to know that we are monitoring your performance and taking that into account. I want to say two more things, and then we will open it for questions and answers. One, so let me show you what the emails look like that you will be receiving every week. So if my screen is shared here, if you can see it, this is what a email looks like. So every week you will get an email that will ask you to do a progress survey. And so here you will have the link to the actual survey that you need to complete. And it always will be due on Sunday, midnight. And then you will always see the list of your team members. This one is a mock-up kind of email, so with the fake names, and then peer evaluations for each team member, and then so you know what country they come from. And so all you do is just click on the link, and it will open. This survey has been already completed, but it will open a short survey. It will ask you to submit your week's deliverables, and there will be a bunch of questions about your team, so we know what's going on. Just complete that every week. We know what's going on. Everything's good. Another important thing that I want to share is that we have a set of coaches, 40 of them this semester, and so they can help you if help is needed. So you can ask for help by sending an email to coaching@xculture.org, and so a coach will be assigned to you, and you can ask them for anything. For example, some people simply ask for feedback. You're working on the report, you want to get some feedback, and so you just send a sample and get feedback. Or maybe there is some sort of a conflict in the team. Again, you can ask for guidance and resolution. Or maybe there is some sort of a situation that you don't know how to resolve. Again, you can ask for advice. The coaches have completed, again, also 4 weeks of training, so they know how to give feedback, how to resolve conflicts, how to help in difficult situations. Or even if you just need tutoring, let's say you don't know the difference between exporting and franchising, or you're not sure what's the best market for this product is, or best marketing strategy. So the coaches are usually graduate students who have completed xCulture before, did extremely well, were invited to become coaches, completed training, and then in the end were promoted to this position. So they tend to have a lot of experience, and they're available to you for free. All you have to do is just ask. So don't wait too long, get their help. All right, so I'm not sure, professors, do you have anything else that I didn't mention, some general stuff that maybe we need to mention before we go to questions and answers?
Maybe we might remember that we are going to have some webinars with the companies that I think they're very important, because they will have the opportunity to know the management of the company, asking questions, and so actually...
Exactly. Yes. So for every company, we schedule 2 webinars. One where the company introduces itself, and then the second one towards the end, where the company talks about, if you have questions, they will answer them. If you have some work that you already completed, they will provide feedback. So there will be 2 meetings with each company. For some companies that participated in the early track, we already had the company introduction webinar. And so there may be a case where you have a recording instead of a live session. And the reason for that is that in most cases, the webinars with the companies are during the business days. And usually not that many students can attend live, because some have school at that time, others already sleeping. And so usually it's most people watching the recording. So therefore, if we have the recording, in most cases, we don't do the second one just because we did it just a couple of weeks ago. So in those recordings are already available for some companies. But usually there will be 2 webinars, and I strongly encourage you to attend them, because even if it's not a company that you're working on, it's still a good idea to attend the webinar, because it's your opportunity to learn about a new business model, about a new product, maybe even ask personal questions. I mean, in many cases, students would ask, so what would it take to, to get a job at your company or to succeed in your industry? So that's perfectly fine. And you can ask not only about the task at hand, but also for general career advice and things like that. So we will try to have those as well. We have some questions. There is a very interesting question. So do the team members see who gave them low evaluations? No, they don't. So we take your privacy very seriously. And so the only people who see the complete set of evaluations is basically me and my IT guy who compiles those numbers. Everybody else, the professors and the students, only see the averages. So you know what the team gave you on average, but you don't know who gave what. So if you see very low evaluations overall, you know that probably most of the team didn't give you high evaluations, but you will not know who is the one who gave low evaluations. Likewise, if you want to give someone low evaluations because they don't perform well, don't worry, they will not know that that was you. So they will only see the averages. So any other questions? Again, if you want to ask questions, you have a Q&A window, or alternatively, if you raise your hand, I guess we can add you here to the panel and you can ask live. A very good question from Nokia 6. I don't know what the name is. Is team peer evaluations a part of the marks or grades? I guess given that the person uses the word marks, probably a Canadian or a British person. That's a very, very, very good question, and let me explain why. Students often get upset when somebody is not performing well on their team because they think it will damage their performance evaluations and grades in the course. The truth is that no, in most cases, your own performance accounts for almost the entire grade. Almost all professors, including myself, and we will ask the others in a minute, have sort of kind of a compound grade. So there are several things that go into your grade. First of all, your peer evaluations, and in most cases, they account for a good portion of your total grade. And peer evaluations, that's only your performance. I mean, if you do well, you get them high. If you don't do well, you get low peer evaluations. Second, again, many professors would look at your weekly progress reviews. Like, for example, I give a little grade to my students for every week they complete the survey. I don't care what you say in the survey, even if you say nothing's working, everything's going bad, but you completed, you told me that, you told me about what's going on in your team, I'll give you a little point each time you complete it. And so the only component where the team sort of has an effect on you is the quality of the report itself. But even with that, I mean, let's say there are 7 of you on the team and somebody didn't participate. As long as you write something in response to each question, so as long as your report is completed, even if some questions, sections are weak, I'll still give you a very high grade. In fact, I personally grade the reports on a sort of like a pass and fail scale for each component. So if your executive summary is good enough, I can read it, I'll give you a good grade. If your marketing section is great, again, I may disagree with some of your decisions, but if it's written up, if you answered all of the questions, I'm happy, because in most cases, there is no right and wrong answer. I'll give you full grade. So even if somebody on your team didn't do a good job, you have enough people to kind of pick up the slack and still do something. Again, it doesn't have to be perfect, but do something. And as long as you complete the full report, I'll give you a very good grade. So I'm not gonna penalize you just because somebody wrote a relatively weak section. So all in all, as long as you personally do well, you personally will get a very good grade for the course. You may not win the competition if your report is weak, but as far as your course grade, I don't worry about that as long as I see effort, as long as I see sustained, participation week after week after week. Of course, if your team tells me that you didn't do anything, of course, if your team report is completely, like some sections are missing, some sections make no sense, yes, in that case, unfortunately, it will be a fail or a low grade. But otherwise, it's all about you. So if you have a conflict in the team, it doesn't have an effect on you. If one of the team members didn't do a good job, but the team kind of did something to pick up the, the problem, I'm perfectly fine with that. You'll get a full grade for the course. How do you guys treat it? So professors, how do you evaluate students? Do you take into account peer evaluations, report quality, weekly performance evaluations, anything else?
If you want me to start, Karen, actually I have been changing my percentage along the way. For example, this year I am actually also considering the preliminary test. So I am giving a small percentage, 5% of the grades or marks, to the preliminary test, so that people are actually reading the manual carefully, because we are actually taking that into account. And then I even give 40% of the grade is linked to peer evaluation, so that we are actually linked to individual performance. And I also give not actually a small percentage, but a quite significant 20% for the weekly survey. And so trying to push students to be careful about the weekly survey, I give a 30% to the final report, so actually the teamwork. And there is also a small percentage for a reflective paper at the end of the project. So basically, the final report is just 30%. It was higher last year, but I thought that it was better to push on the individual things more than on the team report. So I have been reducing it to 30%. Maybe it is low. We will see how it is going this year. But actually, I'm pushing for individual performance quite a lot this year. I don't know, Karen, how you're organizing yourself.
Yeah, I consider those three components, and we all do need to, but I do, like you, change it over time, just seeing different results and how what motivates students. So for peer feedback, I think that's something that we saw in the comments, and people might get concerned about, well, do I need to have a perfect 5 in order to get an A? And from my standpoint, I'm looking at a 3 or greater, because the fact of the matter is, Vas and Ernesto and I can go to the same restaurant. We could have the same spaghetti dinner, and we could all feel the same way about it. But when we fill out the paperwork, maybe Ernesto gives a perfect 5, and Vas, he says, it was very good, so I'm going to give it a 3 on the scale, you know. But we all had a good experience, so we're not going to be too concerned about how close you are to 5, but it's really how close you are to 2. That's the concern. And then the weekly surveys, I've put a lot more points in the last 2 semesters in the weight of those weekly surveys. I feel like the students that complete every weekly survey, they're on track. I want them to be motivated. Just like Vas said, you could put in there, I have no idea what's going on. It's going very badly. That's fine. I'm not looking at the content. It's just, did you do it or didn't you do it? Is I have found that the few students that struggle with it, or maybe are those free riders on the teams, they're the ones that aren't doing those weekly surveys. So that is really like a red flag for me. If people are not doing that, then I feel like they're not plugged in. And then the report quality, the way that I have that scale is you're pretty much guaranteed an A or B if the report is good. And I realize that not every single part of the report needs to be A or B quality. You might have 2 sections that are really strong and some that are okay, you completed them. But I also might feel like if we're all on a team together and I had really strong feelings about the logistics portion, but it just didn't go that way for the details, I wouldn't want my professor to downgrade me, because I could have said, oh, I really, you know, I wanted it to be a different way, but because it's a team project, I can't control all of the content in it. So I get that. I think that we all do. And we tend to be quite generous with the report quality portion. But I'm interested to hear.
Yeah, one thing I want to say here, and I see that all the time, you probably, in fact, you even see pictures here like Elon Musk and Mark Zuckerberg and Steve Jobs, and I have there like Darwin and Tesla and Newton. You probably read a lot of books about them, biographies and stuff like that. And the truth is that all those biographies lie to you. So in most cases, they celebrate their creative genius, you know, how smart they were, how, you know, it's all, I'm sorry, I'm not sure if I'm allowed to say that in, you know, in the webinar, but it's all BS. The truth is that it's all about effort. So it's not about being smart. It's not about being creative. It's about effort. All those guys, the reason they were successful is not because they were the smartest kids on the block. It's because they work hard. Like Steve Jobs didn't invent any of those things that, you know, he's known for. He was the one who, through relentless work, brought it to the market. Darwin, for example, Newton, those dudes woke up like at 5 a.m. every day and worked really, 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 really hard. So it was all about work. And so what I see in X culture is that it's about showing up. So it's not about being the smartest, but it's about being the most persistent. So it's more about grit. Like, for example, in the kids track, so we have, as I said, about 1,000 kids. And there is one kid who has a perfect score on every test, like 4 tests, perfect scores. And the kid happens to be in Greensboro. So he's from one of the schools in Greensboro. And I didn't know the name until yesterday. So I have the kids in Greensboro. We actually have weekly meetings with them. And so I wanted to announce that we have a kid who has the highest score and like the only kid with the perfect score on all four tests. I knew he's from Greensboro and I thought I would meet him. And it turned out to be the kid who showed up for the first meeting with the notepad. He was the only kid who was with the notepad and was taking notes during my first presentation. So as I said, it's not about being the smartest or most creative. It's about doing work day after day after day. So if you do that, you will do fine, and you don't have to be the smartest, the most fluent in English, the most creative marketing strategy. It's more about doing it rather than having the brilliant ideas. Execution, so the performance, as they say, eats creativity for breakfast. I mean, people who achieve success are not necessarily the most creative or have the highest IQ. Those are the people who just had the stamina to work day after day after day for years, and those are the ones who succeed. Anyway, we have a few more questions. Crystal is asking if you have to choose one company. Yes, you have to choose one company. You can, as I said, attend any webinars you want, but you have to submit only one report. And you can choose your company anytime. So if you choose one, but then you decide to switch, that's fine. Every week we will ask you what report you're working on. And so if you decide to switch, just let us know that it's a new one. So there is no penalty for that. We just want to know which one you're working on. So somebody is also asking that I completed the readiness test, but I keep getting reminders. That does happen sometimes. It happens when we either have two email addresses for you, in which case the system thinks you're two different people, or if you somehow got onto two different, what we call contact lists. Again, sometimes that happens, and if so, it kind of treats you as two different people. So if you know you completed the test, you got the confirmation email, but you keep receiving the reminders, just ignore it. So as I said, sometimes it happens due to kind of technical issues, so not a big deal. And there is a question about the symposium. So the next symposium will be in Canada in July. And then if everything goes well, we'll have one in October in in San Antonio, Texas. And then another one in Grenada in 2020. We already have invited people to the Canada symposium, people who have participated last semester and did well. But we will be also inviting people who are participating this semester. And so what we're going to do, since we don't have your final performance yet, we are probably going to invite all of you to apply. But since there will be some time for you to apply and for us to review the applications, by that time we'll have some performance data, so we'll know how well you're doing and if you deserve to be in that 150 group who will be invited to the symposium. We also will be asking for your recommendation letters and for your sort of statement of interest. Again, if they're written well, if everything checks out, you will be invited, even though we will not have your final performance evaluations, because just by the time we have them, it will be almost too late to plan the trip, because you need to apply maybe for a visa, buy the tickets, so it takes some time. So the invitations will be going out very soon, and I hope we will see you there. Ernesto, Karen, they have organized a number of these meetings before, so definitely worthwhile the time. I see Kelvin raised his hand and apparently wanted to ask a question. Kelvin, if you hear us and if you wanted to ask a question, now is your chance.
Yes, sir. Good morning, everyone. I hope you guys are doing well. I am a current UNCG student.
Go UNCG.
What I wanted to ask, actually, I feel a lot better with the peer evaluation in terms of you guys explaining how that's going to be graded. One thing I have learned as a more experienced in years on this earth person is that when you disagree with someone, sometimes that can turn personal. Not everyone takes disagreement well. So, just because you disagree, someone might take that as you don't like them, and all of a sudden now you're getting 2s or 1s on your peer evaluation. So it's nice to know it's accumulative. But with that, the question I do have is, do you think that grouping by age really sets up for a real world, or do you think that having various groups of ages would help to give that real world experience? Because you're talking about kids that are 22, 23, 24 going out, and they may be, if they go into the managerial stage, they're going to have to deal with people that may be older. And so maybe that would be a good experience on how to communicate with someone that's older than them and getting communication across, because that age difference can make a difference in understanding how to speak to one person a certain way versus another group a different way. And so I was wondering, did you guys ever consider that?
You're asking a very, very good question, Kelvin. I actually have, we've given it a lot of thought. First, it will not always be possible to match people by age. So there will be some variance in age, especially once you get kind of in the older categories. So it will not be all perfectly matched. With kids, obviously, we have to keep them within the same age group, because there is a big difference between a 10-year-old and a 15-year-old. But with the students, it will be kind of roughly matched, but not perfectly. That's one. Second, the reason we do it, it's not so much to make it easier for the teams, but because usually those who are like in the 30s and 40s, they tend to have jobs and families, whereas those who are in the like 19, 20, they tend to be full-time in school. And so here it's not so much that we don't want you to experience the variety. The problem is that these people tend to have very different schedules. Some of them have work obligations, family obligations, and sort of have a very different set of the schedule is very different. And so often that leads to unnecessary tensions and problems. Lastly, yes, you're absolutely right. Once you get a job, there will be people there of all ages. And I wish people thought the way you think. In fact, I'm surprised that people don't think that way. The problem is that when we have that age difference, in the team, as I said, anything goes wrong and people blame it on that age difference. And so somehow it always like this red flag. So conflicts happen every time, tensions happen all the time. But if you give them that age difference, they all of a sudden say, oh, that's because I was placed on a team with those kids, or I'm such a serious executive. I went to do, my MBA. I'm 45 years old. I manage my business. And now all of a sudden I have to babysit those 20-year-olds or 23-year-olds. And so we're just trying to remove that kind of additional irritant, just because in many cases people unjustifiably blame every problem on it. And so hopefully that kind of resolves it. But the truth is, as I said, it's not always possible to match people by age. So in most cases it will be, unlike, kids will be matched more or less precisely. But university students, it will be primarily kind of young undergraduate with young undergraduate. And by young, I mean like 19 to 25. Then sort of older undergraduate, like 25 to 30, and maybe 30 and older. So it will not be perfectly matched. It will be still, there will be enough variance there. Yes, Karen, please.
Something. Kelvin's in my online class, and so it was really nice to hear his voice for the first time. So good morning, and thank you for your question. Hopefully when we have other webinars, our students will feel comfortable with just jumping in and asking questions. It's so nice to be able to have a dialogue with all of you. So we realize you can't always attend live, but that's fine. One thing I want to mention is when you're doing the peer reviews, it's really good to think about that from the future thought of HR practices. So now you get a really good experience of seeing how this particular peer review system works, what it feels like to be on one side of it, and then you can kind of remove yourself and think about, as an administrator, what would you do? What did you like about it? What didn't you like about it? Because this will be in the work world in the future. So good experiences to look at from a lot of perspectives.
There are a few more questions that are very good questions. So one, what happens if somebody doesn't pass the readiness test? Well, the system automatically sends you a new link and asks you to retake the test. And it used to be that we would plan that only people can, that people can retake the test only one time. And but then at some point we thought, if somebody is persistent enough to take it multiple times until they pass, maybe we should give them a chance. And so most people pass on the first try. Some people need the second. And then there is a very small number of people who have to take more than 2 times. This semester, we actually have a person who took it 30 times, but eventually passed. And I don't know, I just cannot exclude that person, because if he had the time to take it 30 times, and if that's how long it took the person to pass, I don't know, it's got to be worth something. So I intend to place that person on team.
It was very much
that the effort will be there. So, but yes, you will have a chance. And as long as you pass it, no matter what you need to do to pass it, as long as you find a way to do it, I suppose you'll find a way to be a good team member as well. There is another question about sexual harassment. We don't really have sexual harassment per se, but there is always 1 or 2 cases every semester when we have a case when usually a female student from a part of the world that I will not name likes every single photo of a female team member, again, from a part of the world that I will not name, sends her literally 10 messages every day and wants to meet with her and wants to be friends with her. And so obviously the female student is not comfortable with that. She sends a complaint to us. Immediately we have a professor in Florida, Tim Muth, who is immediately assigned to cases like this. He has decades of experience as a top manager at Fortune 500 companies, and now he's teaching as a professor, very experienced. So he will reach out to all parties, will collect more information, will deal on that case. But almost always what happens is the student, the male student who was sort of, cyber stalking the female student, always says, oh, I'm so sorry, I didn't know it was bad, I just like her and I wanted to show her that. Again, it's not okay, and we don't encourage that. But in most cases, there was no malicious intent. It just kind of cultural difference / maybe taking it a little too far. But if anything happens, if you have a case of bullying or sexual harassment or cyber stalking or anything else that makes you uncomfortable, let us know right away. As I said, we will assign an officer to this case right away. We'll see what's going on. If it's an issue that can be resolved and the kind of perpetrator will say, oh, sorry, I didn't know, will not happen again, then we'll monitor the situation, make sure that everything's fine now. But if it doesn't improve, obviously we will move that person from the program. So we don't want you to be uncomfortable. So if anything, makes you uncomfortable, we'll definitely intervene. Again, just because you had a little argument with someone and you don't like someone, again, that may not necessarily lead to exclusion right away. But if there is a legitimate case to be made that somebody is acting unprofessionally, we will do something about that. Then Crystal is asking if everybody will be invited to the symposium. Everybody from the current semester will have a chance to apply to attend the symposium. But because we only have 150 spots, we will look at the applications and we'll select 150 people. So applying does not guarantee a placement. So we will be given the priority in the following order. So one, people who have completed the coaching program. So first as students and then as coaches, we tend to kind of give them a little more favorable treatment. So there may be a few people who will get, on the list because they had that experience as well. Second, your performance. If you did well in X-Culture, good peer evaluations, report quality was good, you participated every week, you provided insightful comments, that counts for a lot and obviously will play a huge role. Third, recommendations from professors. Your professors know you very well, so if a professor tells us that John Smith is a good student and I highly recommend him, that matters. And then obviously the quality of your own application. So we will ask you why you think you should be selected. We will ask you for the reference letters. If those look good, you will have a chance. We also try to keep it more diverse. So students from underrepresented countries, from far away, maybe countries that are developing, developing countries may not, always have enough money to attend. So obviously they will be given also some special treatment just because for them it's a little bit harder to, apply and attend. So we try to encourage participation from all around the world so we have enough countries represented there as well. But I strongly encourage you all to apply. As I said, even though many people apply and there is a strict competition, but the truth is that also not everyone who applies can attend. Some people realize that it's too expensive for them or the schedule doesn't work. So spots open all the time. And if you really, really want to attend and if your performance is good and your professor supports you, you probably will be on that list. So do not be discouraged. Do apply if you want to attend and we'll see how it goes. So what else? Yeah, I guess.
Someone asked the question, Vas, of, I took the readiness test, when will I see my team members? And so I just wanted to clarify what you said is Monday that will happen. It will be Eastern Standard Time in the afternoon. For some other places in the world, it will be in the evening. And then everybody does need to respond by Thursday. Isn't that true? Maybe talk about
well, so yes, so sort of we have, as I said, a weekly cycle. So every week there is a deadline, but the first week there will be 2. So first on Thursday, the only thing that you will need to tell us is if you've established contact with your team. We used to not have that first, deadline, but now we do it so that you have an early start. So we sort of want to prompt you to contact your team members as soon as possible. And then on Sunday, we will ask you again, there will be no tasks related to the, no deliverables related to the report itself. We will only ask again if you've met your team members, and then next week you will have to select the company, and then you will have to decide on the market and then marketing and so on and so on and so on. So, but yes, the first week or 2, it's all about establishing contact, getting to know your team members, deciding on the company, and only then you start working on the challenge. So as I said, expect your team assignment Monday evening our time. So if you're Europe, Africa, Australia, Asia, it will be probably a very late hour in your time zone, or maybe even early morning of Tuesday that you will see the assignment of your team members. Yeah. People are asking about, again, symposiums. So I will be sending out the invitations probably sometime this weekend. As I said, you will have some time to apply, and then the final decisions will be made hopefully within a few weeks once we have a little information about your performance. Certificates, yeah, very good question. Everybody will get certificates at the end. I may have a sample here somewhere, but that's okay. So at the end, you will receive several things, actually. So you will all receive certificates, but also you will receive a detailed recommendation letter. It's like 5 pages. It will talk about the experience you had, the skills you acquired, your performance review, so that when you come to a job interview, you will be able to show something. And we hear so many stories that go like this. You know, I was in an interview and I was just like the other 500 applicants, but then I mentioned my ex-culture experience. I show my recommendation letter, my certificate, and the employer all of a sudden like, oh, tell me more. I've never seen a student who has completed a project for a real company in a real global virtual team. I really want to know more. So that kind of differentiates you from the rest of the applicant pool. And so yes, you will get that. In addition, you will also get your personal performance review, again, several pages, so you know how you did. And then we also try to send you your personal cultural intelligence report. So you will be taking some tests that we collect the data mainly for research. So we're trying to understand why some students do better than others. But since we have it, we will also send you a personal detailed cultural intelligence report. So how you compare it to the rest of the world, but also what you can do to improve it. So again, if it's good, again, not all students score, have high cultural intelligence, but if you do happen to have high cultural intelligence, you can even include that report in your job application, because you will have a documented proof of, kind of high cultural IQ. So we'll have that as well. Yeah, Ernesto, yeah, wonderful. Yeah, that's what it looks like. So the design has been changing over time. In the early years, we actually had logos of all of the universities. Like when we started, we had 7 universities first time, and then like 15, 20, 30. But then at some point it became like so many that if we wanted to put all the logos, like basically the whole, certificate will be just the logos of ex-culture. So yeah. All right, so I see there are a few more questions here that come in, but most of them are repetitive. Somebody is asking, Sandra, very good question, if the certificates will be digital or hard copies. Digital, and here is why. We used to mail hard copies to all the students, but you can imagine, at that time we had like 2,000 or so. First of all, it's a huge cost. I mean, like you guys participating essentially for free. So some universities pay as a little, like $250 for the whole class. So it may be as little as like $1 or $2 per student. And so even if we send the certificates to universities and not to each student individually, it's still like hundreds of packages. And depending on the destination, it can be like literally $100 just to ship it. And we don't have that money. So, we keep the cost low. Everybody here, Karen, Ernesto, we are not paid. So, but at the same time, we have a very small budget. And if we started sending the hard copies, it would cost us just too much. Then we gave the option to the students to order hard copy as long as they can pay for the shipping and handling. And honestly, I hated it. So we would get like 100 or so requests for copies, and they charge like $30 or something like that. But I mean, honestly, it takes so much time to get, first of all, the addresses are not always, complete. Second, you have to buy the envelopes. You have to print that stuff. You have to package it. You have to make sure that all the addresses match. Like it literally, like my team here, Karen may still remember, we did it a couple of years ago. Like literally, I would have 2 of my assistants, like the whole room is filled with those certificates and boxes. And, we're packaging them. And instead of working on something more important, we basically reduce ourselves, to all this packing and packing. And it not only costs a lot of money to the students, in the end, we don't really get anything for that, because the real cost, as I said, it is about $30, with all the paper and shipping and stuff like that. So we spend like several days of working hard for that. And in the end, I mean, there is really no point. And then on top of that, something always gets lost. And as a result, people, don't get the certificates and then complain. We have to send it again. So it just takes too much time. So what we do now, we just send you high resolution, print ready electronic copies. And all you have to do is just go to a print shop, pay like $1 or so for a high quality, laminated paper, and you get your certificate right there that minute, very quickly. Same thing with professors. If you wanted to print it locally, usually it's like 15 to 20 cents per high quality color copy. So even if you have 30, 40, 50 students in the class, it will be like $5 for the whole thing. So it's much cheaper for you than to pay for the shipping. It will not be lost. You will print it out whenever you're ready. So definitely works much better that way. So now we only provide high definition print ready certificates and reference letters, and you can always print it out a few minutes. It will not cost you much. And so it just seems to work much better, saves time and money for everyone. All right, so Again, I see a few more questions, but most of them are repetitive. We will record this meeting for those who did not attend live, so obviously they will be able to attend. And one of the problems I actually see, I never knew that, but turns out our software for the webinar allows up to 100 people participating at the same time. And so it used to be that we would only have like 20, 30 people at the same time. But today I noticed that we are exactly at 100. So from which I assume that there is a large number of people who could not attend. So for the future references, first come, first serve. So I'll see if we can expand the number of people who can attend. And I think we can stream it live on YouTube and Facebook. So I guess people can watch there. But otherwise, the recording will be available. So if you cannot attend live, you can watch the recording. All right. Well, thank you so much, Karen, Ernesto, for being here. Any closing remarks?
Well, maybe the only point is that actually the students that are here are some of the most motivated. Maybe I didn't know about this 100 limits, but I was thinking that people watching the video can be especially motivated. And so I would recommend not being frustrated if some of the other people in the team are not as motivated as you are, but take this as an opportunity to experience a real work-life environment in a global virtual team. So try to push your team forward despite the people that you have in the team. And if some people are not doing as you would like, this is actually what is happening in real business. So this is actually an opportunity. And don't be frustrated, because in the end it will be rewarding and it is not going to affect your grades or marks. So this is my main recommendation, especially for the very beginning of the project.
Yep, I totally agree with that. All right, well, thank you so much, everyone, and good luck. So as I said, it will be tough at times, but when it's all over, you will be very happy that you have done it. Professors and students, thank you so much.
Thank you.